see what happens to cause distortions of the shape of the parabola. Let's look at the following. Graphing the parabola defined by f of x equals ax squared. If a is positive, the parabola opens upward like we talked about earlier, and if a is negative, the parabola opens downward. Now here's a little bit more about the shape. If the absolute value of a is greater than 1, the graph of the parabola is narrower than the graph of y equals x squared. If the absolute value of a is less than 1, the graph of the parabola is wider than the graph of y equals x squared. We will put all of that together in just a moment, but let's look simply at this function, g of x equals negative x squared. Now you know what the graph of h of x or f of x or g of x equals x squared looks like. It's a parabola opening upward, vertex 0, 0. This negative, because a is essentially negative 1, the parabola opens downward, and the shape is exactly the same except reflected across the x-axis. Now, by the way, as we graph all of these parabolas, all of these quadratic functions, when in doubt, you can draw a table and come up with ordered pair solutions. We're just looking at shortcuts in graphing quadratic functions. But when in doubt, it is certainly true that what we're trying to graph are ordered pair solutions of the function. So let's look at the graph of g of x equals negative x squared. The vertex is still at 0, 0. This negative just causes the parabola to open downward, but the shape is exactly the same. And again, please try and imagine that this is symmetric. There is my vertex at 0, 0. What is the axis of symmetry? It's going to be for quadratic functions. It's always x equals the x value of the vertex. So here, the axis of symmetry is the y-axis. And what is the graph of the y-axis? It's x equals the x value of the vertex, x equals 0. Now, all of this together, and let's look at the following. This is in general the graph of a quadratic function. The graph of a quadratic function written in the form f of x equals a, x minus h quantity squared plus k is a parabola with vertex hk. If a is greater than 0, the parabola opens upward. If a is less than 0, the parabola opens downward. And the axis of symmetry is the line whose equation is x equals, notice that h, the h is the x value of the vertex, just as I mentioned a moment ago. So let's try and put it all together, and let's sketch the graph of this quadratic function. Its graph is a parabola. If you'd like, you can think of this in two ways. You can think of this as shifting, and this is the parabola shifted 3 units to the left and then 1 unit up. Or if you'd like, you can go directly to the vertex. The vertex has coordinates the opposite of this. So -3, that is the x value of the vertex, and then whatever that is, in this case, 1 as the y value. So let's now graph our vertex, -3, 1, and then you need to look at the value of a. Is a positive or negative? It's negative, that means it opens downward. Now, what happens to the 3? What does the 3 cause? Remember the absolute value of a, if it is greater than 1, which it is in this case, it causes the look of the parabola to be narrower, a little bit narrower. It kind of stretches the parabola a little bit, the -3, so it looks a little more narrow. Let's go ahead and then sketch, and that's all we're doing is sketching. I'm going to sketch a parabola opening downward and narrower than usual. There you go. And hopefully that looks like a function. Remember, everything that we are graphing is a function, so it passes the vertical line test. There we have it. My vertex has coordinates -3, 1. Let me go ahead and sketch in the axis of symmetry. And here is a sketch of the axis of symmetry. And you be thinking about the equation of the axis of symmetry. It has equation x equals the x value of the vertex, in this case -3. So there we have it. Now let's go ahead and do this again. Let's graph one more function. Make sure you're comfortable with this. Let's suppose we have, let's use h of x again, equals 10 times x plus 4 quantity squared minus 6. Let's go straight to the vertex of this parabola. The vertex is the opposite of that number, -4. That's the x value. And then whatever that is, -6. There is the vertex. So now let's sketch the vertex. -4, -6. Looks right there. Now look at A and tell me if this parabola opens upward or downward. Because A is positive, it opens upward. What else do we know? The absolute value of A is greater than 1, so the appearance is narrower. All right, so I'm going to sketch it in and make it narrower, but it is a parabola, and be very, very careful because it does need to pass the vertical line test, so kind of try and make sure it does. Mine's a little wiggly, but you get the idea. And then what is the graph of the axis of symmetry? Let's graph that axis of symmetry, and you be thinking about the equation of this graph, the axis of symmetry. Remember I told you it will each time have equation x equals the x value of the vertex. So the x value of the vertex is -4. This vertical line has equation x equals -4. The vertex has coordinates -4, -6. And this is a function. It does pass the vertical line test. All right, this time practice graphing quadratic functions.